Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Schreiber. How are you, Eastview kiddos? We're back, and this is our last week where we're going to be talking about strategies for tuning into those words that you don't know the meaning of as you're reading. Like I've explained before, you know lots of words and you can read lots of words really well and you don't have to stop and figure out what they're saying, but we do have to do some work and build our vocabularies as we're reading. So, like we've talked about in the past, let's see if I can get to this slide. First thing we need to do is notice words and think about meanings as we're reading. We need to stop and really do the thinking when we get to a word that we don't understand, and we might need to try several strategies. We're going to go over the strategies today because we have a new strategy that we're working on. We've had this strategy, look around the word. Oftentimes in nonfiction text for kids, the author will tell you in the sentence that it's in or in the sentence after, sometimes the sentence before, what the word means. Use your photos, diagrams, or illustrations. It's very helpful in nonfiction texts because they oftentimes have diagrams and photographs, captions, all kinds of things to help us. Fiction books will have illustrations, but as we move into chapter books, not so much. Use those context clues. Think in your head, what's happening in this part of the story? How is the word being used? What's a word that I already know that could take the place of this word, or a group of words, a phrase that could take the place of this word and still make sense? And then reread the sentence with the word that you chose and see if it still makes sense. We've got use prefixes and suffixes to help you figure out the changes to the base words and how the word is functioning now. And we've got use a glossary or dictionary. Glossaries are in nonfiction. Dictionaries, you can do a little Google search if you need to. And we've got ask an adult. That is our last strategy that we're teaching you. And we teach it last because, look at, yeah, you can see it. It's bright yellow today. It's important to use the other strategies first so that you become independent and you can master figuring out these words for yourself. If ask an adult is your go-to strategy and you're not really strong at using those other strategies, you're never going to train your brain and become strong at using those other strategies. So it's important that you really take the time to stop while you're reading and figure out these words. You can always go back and reread to get back into the gist of the story if it takes you a while to figure out these words. But it's super important that you train your brain for all of these strategies to figure out these words, and pretty soon you'll do it in just a couple seconds. But if you ever get really stuck on a word, none of those strategies are working, then ask an adult. All right, so today what we're gonna do is we are going to practice doing this, and I am going to pull up an article here. This is March, it was from March. It's our National Geographic Explorer. We're gonna go to the elephant article. This is Gorongosa's elephants. Years of civil war brought harm to the elephants. Now they are reclaiming their home. And then see this thing in red up here? It says before you read. If you click on that, it tells us a little bit more. Wildlife and wild places, life science. As you read, think about the ways that elephants changed their behavior when they were threatened. And we all know that word threatened already. It means whenever you are in danger. So as we're reading, we're thinking about the ways the elephants changed their behavior when they were threatened. So that is what they want us to think about as we're reading this today. So we're going to do this a little differently than we have in the past. I'm going to get us started, and then you're going to read parts of this text on your own, and then we're going to talk about words that you read. So it was a beautiful place once. Ooh, that means that maybe it's not now. And it will be again. But from 1977 to 1992, Gorongosa National Park was a war zone. Ooh, we know wars can be pretty violent, not really fun. Okay. And now look, they're giving us a nonfiction text feature. It looks like they have a box around part of Africa. Do you see that on the map? I love maps. It's one thing I love to see in a nonfiction text. And then they sort of drag it down and look, They give you an up-close view of that part of Africa. And they show you all these lines, mean that those are different countries. And then they have this country, Mozambique, highlighted in green. And look at that little star right there. We can use this map and see that that's where Gorongosa National Park is located. Now, I would like you to read these 2 paragraphs by yourself right now. And if you come across any words that you can't explain to someone else, I want you to stop and try to figure them out. So go ahead and pause this video here and then try to figure out, just read and think about, make sure you know the meanings to all of those words. And if not, use those strategies that we've been learning. Okay, go ahead and pause the video. All right, we're back. So you have read these 2 paragraphs, and I'm wondering if you came across any words that you stopped to tune into, because maybe you realized that you could read it pretty easily, but you couldn't explain it to someone. I'm guessing that a lot of you probably, if you were tuning into new words, stopped on this word right here, engaged. It's not tough for us to read at this point in the year, but do we know what engaged means in this sentence? A lot of times we think about engaged as when 2 people make a promise to get married to each other, right? Yeah. Is that what this word engaged means in the sentence? 2 years later, it was engaged in a civil war. Yeah, we're not talking about getting married here, are we? Yeah. All right. So, what strategies did you use? Did you look around the word? Because if you did, you can see that the author does not explain what the word engaged means. And it's not a bold word, so it's not in the glossary. And also, we don't have any nonfiction text features that are helping us understand what engaged means. We have a map that shows us where the park is, but nothing else. So we're probably going to have to use context clues here, because there aren't any real suffixes on this word either. So if we think about what's going on, we know that we're reading an article about elephants who changed their behaviors because of the war in this country, obviously. So that's what's going on in the story. This is where our thinking for context clues comes in. And now we need to think about how it's being used. Anytime you see an ED ending, you know that it's an action word. So it's being used as an action word. So 2 years later, we're talking about the country of Mozambique. And we're talking about 2 years later, it was engaged in a civil war. We know that civil wars, like in our country, is where 2 sides of the country are fighting against each other. So what's a word that we could think of that would make sense there? 2 years later, it was having a civil war. Yeah, I would say absolutely. Or involved in a civil war. If you came up with either of those, good for you. That's how we use our strategies. If you couldn't come up with it on your own, did you ask an adult? Because if you ever get stuck and you can't figure it out, but you've tried all of your strategies, that's when you should ask an adult. All right. And how about this word right down here? I'm sure a lot of you read it correctly right away because you saw the POP and knew pop, and then the ATION, Asian, population. But what does that word population mean? That's not a word that a lot of second going into third grade students use all the time. So did you stop and use your strategies to figure it out? I hope that that's a word you tuned into, because I don't see a lot of you out there able to tell me what population means. Okay, so number 1, first strategy. Did the author explain it in the sentence or the sentence after or the sentence before? No, the author doesn't tell us what population means. It's a word the author thinks we should already know. So that didn't work. We don't have photos or diagrams helping us figure it out. That's not going to work. It does have that TION ending, but at this point in your life, that probably doesn't help you out that much. And so we could try context clues, right? We don't want to try ask an adult yet because it's too soon. We haven't tried one of our strategies. So let's see. We're talking about large people and animals are suffering because of this war. Large animals are missing. The population of 2,500 elephants was reduced to fewer than 200. Wow. So we're talking about numbers changing, right? So the number of 2,500 elephants was reduced to fewer than 200. I put a word that I already knew in there. Does it make sense? Yeah, it does. So population means number. It's the number of elephants in this sentence. If we were talking about the population of Olean, we'd be talking about the number of people that live there. But because we're talking about elephants that live in this park, so population means the number of something that lives in a place. Okay, good job. Context clues worked for that one. I am going to scroll down a little bit, and I would like you to pause the video and then read this paragraph. Tune into any words that are unfamiliar to you that you can read easily, but maybe you couldn't explain to someone, and then turn the video back on and we'll talk about what you just did. Okay, so you just read this paragraph, and right off the bat, you had this phrase, animal behaviorists. Animal behaviorists believe that these elephants are aggressive. If you came up with somebody who studies elephants, you're right. You could use context clues to figure that one out. Now, if you had this pulled up on your laptop or iPad at home, you could actually click on this bold word and it would take you right to the definition. Or if you had the paper copy and we were at school, you could flip through to the end of the article and use the glossary. So this is one where, because it's bold, we know that it's probably going to be in a glossary if you have access to it. It says an animal behaviorist is a person who studies the ways in which animals interact with each other, with other living beings, and with the environment. But you could also figure this out from the context clues. It's somebody who studies animals. So animal behaviorists believe that these animals are aggressive. Woo! Did anybody stop and tune into that word aggressive? Some of you might not know it already, and some of you might know it already. We could look around the word, but the author doesn't explain it. And I'm looking at the photograph and the caption. Elephants are known for their social bonds, intelligence, and memory, but that's not really telling me. I don't know if it means the same thing as intelligent or not. If I keep reading, I don't know. I really am not sure what that word aggressive means. And the author doesn't give us a lot of context clues to figure out either. So this is a word where we don't have any suffixes or prefixes that we know. The nonfiction text features, photographs, diagrams, that kind of stuff, they're not helping us. Looking around the word didn't help. Context clues isn't helping. This is a word where it would have been a great one for you to use our last strategy. If all else fails, ask an adult. And I hope that a lot of you tuned into this word and asked an adult. Aggressive, the adult should have told you, means threatening and getting ready to like fight or defend. If you're aggressive, you're sort of like you're on guard. Yeah, like if an adult or a human is being aggressive, if your brother or sister is being aggressive, they're getting in your space. Yeah, yeah, they're poking your buttons. They're, you know, trying to get a rise out of you. Yeah, that's what aggressive means. So that's how we use all of our strategies for tuning into new words. Like I've explained in the past videos, boys and girls, tuning into new words is especially important as you get older, because you're going to read more and more texts where you know, figuring out what the words say is easy, but you need to tune into those and develop your vocabulary. One thing that you can do is you can keep a little sticky note when you're reading and the words that you figure out, you can write them on your sticky note and then keep them with you. And if you keep that handy, you can use them when you're reading and writing, and then you really make them part of your vocabulary. Okay, boys and girls, take care. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.